Far left extremists who are out rioting in New York City who threw Molotov cocktails at the NYPD are now facing life in prison. And there it is, man. Life comes at you fast, huh? These people, seemingly normal, the two attorneys, just one day decided to go out, light up some Molotovs, pass them out, throw them out, and now your life is gone. Over. These people are truly insane, man. And I'll tell you what, this is not, in my opinion, a one-off. I think when you're starting to see what appears to be normal people, like this one dude, just a lawyer at a firm, he's got a regular picture wearing a suit, goes out tossing Molotovs at cop cars, we are sitting dangerously close to the edge. If not, we've already gone over it. Actually, that's stupid. Why should I even say we're close to the edge? No, we've gone over it. We have. They're literally throwing Molotovs. Now they're literally facing life in prison. We've got some weird occupation going on in Seattle, and they are expanding. The other cities are now trying to create their own autonomous zones, and the police are fighting with them. This could be something big. It could be nothing at all. Maybe it's just an election year and things often get crazy. But these people, man, you know what? This one young woman, ukulele playing street musician, her friends are like, she's just misunderstood. She's normal. She's a regular person. She was arrested in 11 different states or something, or 11 times. I don't know, some ridiculous amount of times. Nah, I'm sorry. These people are far from normal. There's nothing normal about going out and trying to kill people. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's just a fact. I guess one of the women threw a Molotov at a car with cops inside of it. So no, not normal at all. And my fear is escalating. Let's read the story, but we can also read. I also want to talk about this crackdown on autonomous zones. They're trying to expand these things. So first and foremost, let's read the story here from the Daily Mail. 3 New Yorkers, including 2 lawyers, were indicted for arson and the use of explosives after they allegedly threw Molotov cocktails at NYPD vehicles during a night of peaceful George Floyd protest on May 29th. Are you kidding me with that, Daily Mail? Spare me. No. It was a peaceful protest aside from the people throwing Molotov cocktails at cops. Yeah, I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. It immediately goes from being a peaceful protest to a violent riot the moment someone throws a Molotov cocktail. I mean, actually, I'd argue the moment they started passing out Molotov cocktails. The 7-count indictment charge for Samantha Shader, 27, and attorneys Colin Ferd Mattis and Uruj Rahman for allegedly carrying out the attacks, which were caught on videotape. The defendants are charged with the use of explosives, arson, use of explosives to commit a felony, arson conspiracy, use of a destructive device, civil disorder, and making or possessing a destructive device. It does feel like a lot of these are a little redundant, but I guess, sure, whatever. And they got a photo of this woman or whatever. The indictments were handed up by the grand jury in federal court in central Islip, New York on Thursday. Convictions could lead to life sentences for all 3. Man, that's brutal. I guess, I don't know if a life sentence makes sense. I really don't. I mean, you have to wonder, what's the point of locking someone up for their entire life? You think they're irredeemable. You think they can't be changed. You think that they'll do this again. I kind of feel like these people have probably been crying. I think they have photos of it. Let me come to the photos of them. I think they have mugshots or something. I guess not. I feel like these people. Oh yeah, right there. Look at these faces. How long do you think these people have been crying for? I'm willing to bet that they've cried nonstop the entire time. I'm not even kidding. They're probably sitting there just crying. That's it. They threw their lives away. They had no idea what they were doing. These people, it's sad. Look how stupid this person is. They did it all on camera too. Like, you got to be a special kind of dumb to consider doing what they did. I swear. NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea spoke out about the accusations made against Shader, Mattis, and Rahman. Violence like that alleged here not only endangers our NYPD officers, but threatens the constitutional right of people to peacefully protest. These indictments by our federal partners reflect our joint condemnation of the kind of isolated acts a just society can never tolerate. Shea was among authorities announcing the indictments today. Richard P. Donahue, United States Attorney of the Eastern District of New York, says the defendants allegedly threw the homemade explosives at NYPD vehicles without regard for the potentially deadly consequences. Such criminal acts should never be confused with legitimate protest. Those who carry out attacks on NYPD officers or vehicles are not protesters. They are criminals, and they will be treated as such. And I completely agree. But I'll tell you what. Right now, across this country, we have the emergence of autonomous zones, for the most part, just in Seattle. The Chaz, they call it. And they've been routinely mocked, but there are people who are starting to get agitated. Apparently, in one anonymous interview, someone hiding their face talks about how they live there and their rights have been taken away. Yep, that's what happens when these people take over. They don't care about your rights. They're accountable to no one. So sure, you can sit back, you can mock, and you can laugh. And I think this Chaz or whatever is ripe for parody and mockery. But they're trying to set up zones like this in other places. Now, in Asheville, I believe, North Carolina and Nashville, the cops came in and stomped them out real quick and tried to stop it from happening. But they're calling today for reinforcements because they want to do more. Let me tell you what's going to happen. Well, let me tell you what might happen. I say might because I don't actually think it's highly probable. But if these people actually gain ground, right? Because in Seattle, they're talking about defunding or dismantling the police. But one of the demands, often we see this all the time, is that people who are arrested for specific, for fighting against police brutality must be released and charges be dropped. Well, guess what? We've already seen a couple jurisdictions comply. New York City said they won't charge any of the protesters for low-level offenses. Fort Worth has actually dropped the rioting charges against many people. If these people actually gain ground, guess what? Then these Molotov morons from New York, they'll be released. If these people actually get their demands, the Molotov morons will be released. I think we're dangerously close to this. Now, the other day on the IRL podcast, I was talking to my buddy Adam, and he says he thinks it can't actually get that far because these cities can't survive on their own. And that's a good point. They can't. He was saying basically if it actually came down to real civil conflict, then these people are going to be met with a bunch of, red areas surrounding the cities saying, nuh-uh, you stay, you're not coming here because they got the guns. They're the farmers, right? And so maybe. However, you have 65 million people who voted for Hillary Clinton in the last election. We don't know where the numbers lie going into November. And I think this will actually bolster the Republicans' cause. I do. So it's quite possible that these people they're destroying their own cause with their moronic violence. The Chaz stuff, I don't know. Listen, there's a study that says peaceful protest increases Democrat turnout and violent riots increases Republican turnout. I can't tell you what the Chaz would actually generate because it's arguably violent. It's arguably peaceful. People, the New York Times, for instance, is showing these things in a positive light. So regular people might see that and they're like, it's a street festival. CNN's certainly lying about it. But if you watch right-wing media, they're showing you the worst of it. Raz over in Seattle, he's got guns and he's assaulting people and people complaining about their rights being stripped away. So in that regard, it may be more neutral. The Molotov cocktail stuff, however, that's probably going to bolster the Republicans come November and all of the violent rioting across the country. That's why I can't believe the polls, man. When you see this stuff, when you see life sentences, I'm like, are there people who are really going to get behind these people throwing Molotov cocktails? Do you want to live in this city? I can't imagine property value is gonna maintain itself in Minneapolis, in Seattle, or even in Nashville or Asheville right now. Think about it. They're trying to set up more autonomous zones. You've got Nashville, Tennessee, and Asheville, North Carolina. It's funny, those are the two cities, right? You want to buy property there right now? Do you want to live in Minneapolis where they just voted to abolish the police department? Did you hear about that one? They voted to abolish the police department. These people have lost their minds. The city council voting for this, they've truly gone insane. These cities, man, it really does feel like many of them are on the verge of collapse. Seattle can't get a hold of what's going on. Other zones are popping up. Now, you can argue they're just little Occupy Wall Street occupations, but they're different. CNN the other day, and I think this was very, very much so an exaggeration, said, you got to understand these people are armed and there's a real potential for bloodshed if law enforcement tries to remove them. If that's true, then you really got to remove them now. I mean it. If CNN really thinks that there could be bloodshed, then yeah, you got to go in and you got to get rid of this, okay? Because what's going to happen if you let it sit there and fester? More people show up, more guns show up, and then you can't get rid of it at all. And then you actually have a shootout. That's not going to end well for anybody. We're getting dangerously close to something people are going to wish never happened. And I'm talking about, regular people who aren't paying attention, who aren't speaking up. You might wish you did. You might wish you did. Think about the people who just bought their home in Minneapolis. Now they're abolishing the police department. Hey, man, shouldn't have done it. If you still live in New York, in Los Angeles, in Minneapolis, in Seattle, or these two cities, I feel for you, man. And you probably want to get out soon. I left I left New York. I left New York a long time ago. You know why? I say it all the time. I saw this coming. And now think about where they're at now. I lived on, so I lived on Myrtle and Nostrand. Many of you, if you follow my stuff, you've heard me tell this, but I got to tell you. And that's one of the streets where a black identity extremist executed 2 cops. I lived on that street, literally 1 block down from where it happened. I look out my window, I could see the crime scene. So it was like, I was half a block from the intersection or so, where a guy walked up to a squad car and went pop, pop. I saw that happen and I said, wow, man. With all the Black Lives Matter stuff, with the riots, this was around the time of Ferguson. I was like, I know what comes next. So I moved, I ended up moving to Miami briefly. More of a work thing, but kind of like I'm going to get away from the city. And I went to rural Miami, mind you. When I came back to the New York area, I'm like, there's no way I'm going into the city. And so I went to the Jersey side. Then in Manhattan, and this happened, I think maybe it was 2015 or 16. I think it was 2016. Somebody planted bombs in Manhattan and they blew up and people got injured. Somebody planted bombs in New Jersey. And I said, I got to get away from these dense metro areas, man. Maybe that's just like a normal thing because things like this have happened in the past. Like there have been attacks, there have been bombings, they happen. I'm not going to pretend like it's only unique to my life and my experience. But I saw that combined with the escalation of protests, the escalation of the weird, fringe ideologies and the chaos around, just the election and politics. And I thought, you know what? I gotta move further out. Well, now we're seeing the rioting across the country, and I'm thinking the same thing. It's time to move even further out. This stuff, it's not going to stop, right? So let me show you some of these photos, and I'll give you some context for those that are watching. Check this out. They say, police in Asheville, North Carolina responded in force and tore down barricades blocking a public road as they quickly broke up the attempted autonomous zone the demonstrators attempted to create there. I got to say, man, they're not very smart because it would be very, very easy to set up an autonomous zone. I got to be honest. What did they do? Did they announce where to go and then showed up and then put pallets in the street and the cops just cleared it out? These people probably don't know what they're doing, but it'd be relatively easy to find a random street and just do what they did in Capitol Hill. But sure, fine, whatever. The difference with Capitol Hill in Seattle is that they fought with the police and the police eventually gave up. Here, the police came in and the protesters gave up. So, we'll see how things go down. Now, this might be just Occupy 2.0. Maybe it doesn't really go anywhere. Maybe protesters do this stuff, sure. But I'll tell you what, man. You combine this with what Dave Chappelle was saying the other day. You combine this with what I saw on my street. Maybe that's just unique to me. Maybe that's not maybe it was just a rare occurrence. But I lived on the street. I watched it happen, right? Dave Chappelle warned in his special 846 the other day. I think it came out the other day or a couple days ago, that you've got these extremists that are going to come out and they're going to take action into their own hands. You are going to see more and more violence. And I'll tell you what, while he focused specifically on, Chris Dorner and these black identity extremists who are killing cops, you also got to recognize you got these zealots, fanatics. I think it's hilarious. I did a video calling them leftist fanatics because they were tearing down statues. And all of these lefties on Facebook started screeching and complaining that I called them fanatics. I'm sorry, bro. If you're a zealot, okay, if you show up randomly in violation of the law and in violation of the democratic process because you think you have the right over other people to impose your will on them, and you throw rope over a statue, pull it down, bashing a guy's skull and putting him in the hospital in critical condition, I'm sorry, man, I'm going to call you a fanatic. If you try to take over city streets, you take a look at what's going on in the Chaz. Fanatics, okay? These people did not have a radical abolition of the law, of authority. They created their own authority. I find it absolutely hilarious when you read these forums, and there are people saying, I thought we were in an anarcho-syndicalist commune. Someone actually posted that. And it's because a dude showed up with guns and said, look at me, I'm the police now. And they could do nothing about it. Welcome to a power vacuum. These people are just, you know what, man? It is the excesses of success. These are people who don't have jobs. And I get it. That's not the excess. That's COVID. A lot of these people, they're bored. But, when I go down to Occupy Wall Street, it was funny because a lot of people, like Fox News, for instance, said that these kids were trust fund kids who had nothing to do. And they were partly correct. Some of them were just in school and had nothing to do. A handful of them were trust fund kids, meaning they just had a ton of money and were super bored. And they were so, these rich kids, okay, they've never had to work for anything. So they just doted about, all hippie-like, and used their money to fund radical insurrectionist ideals because they didn't know what it was like to work for stuff. So to them, being their privileged, wealthy selves were just like, dude, like, I got all this money, man, and people are hungry. Like, why don't they just buy food? You know, like, I just buy food when I'm hungry. Like, they have really no idea. I kid you not, man. I know some people who have said things to me like, hey, man, you want to fly with us to Geneva this weekend? I'm like, what? This weekend? You want me to book a round trip ticket right now to Geneva? Are you nuts? Yes, because a lot of them don't understand. So what happens? You take someone who's never had to work and has money and they fund this stuff. They fund a bunch of people who have nothing to do. And the people who have nothing to do are desperate for a purpose, and they don't realize what life is really like for the people who have to do things. So here's what happens. They try to create more and more of these autonomous zones, and it's like an abnormal growth. They produce nothing. They produce literally nothing. They consume. That's all they do. You look at the Chaz, and what do they have? They have that little community garden, but spare me. The amount that they're going to produce is going to be 0.1% compared to what they consume. They have these little potted plants on the ground in their little circular dirt patch. They're not going to get anything out of that. That's ridiculous. It's already past planting. I guess they're 2 months late to actually start planting. It's all a LARP. Meanwhile, they're asking for free food and pizzas to come and support the occupation, which is accomplishing literally nothing. In the meantime, a power vacuum forms. Dude shows up with guns, and now he's like, I'm in charge. They have done literally nothing. It is just discord. They have no idea. You know, it's like people want something to do. They need a purpose. Idle hands, the devil's playground, they say, right? So you get a bunch of people who have no purpose, and they will make one up. And sometimes the purpose they make up is just absolutely insane. You get more of this. Let's read a little bit about what's going on with these new autonomous zones. Apparently, they're calling for reinforcements because they can't get past the police. The Daily Mail says they've tried to set up the barricades. As the police union officials in Seattle say, the city's on the verge of lawlessness. On the verge of. You are in lawlessness, bro. The efforts in Tennessee and North Carolina were met with a strong response from local authorities. In contrast to Seattle. Now, that's not true. In Seattle, the cops fought for days, I believe, firing tear gas, and then finally evacuated and surrendered the precinct. In Asheville, activists say that about 100 people gathered Friday night on Lexington Avenue under the interstate, where they attempted to block the street with barricades and take control of the area. Police responded in force and tore down the barricades, video from the scene shows. Demonstrators issued a cry for reinforcements on social media and vowed to return on Saturday. People are needed now. Please share this if you can't be here. Supplies are also needed. I think they'll win it. I think they'll get their autonomous zone. Think about it. You get 10 people, they stand in a line and they block the street, and then the rest set up their little barricades and do it. And what? It's too late. There's not enough police in these cities. This is decay, decadence. It is part of the collapse. It's these people who have the utmost privilege and nothing else to do, so other people pay for them to eat. You know, looking at the farm in Chaz really makes you wonder, right? They got 200 plus people there at any given moment, according to their metrics. It's probably going to increase dramatically today. They had a massive protest of like 60,000 people. But let's just say of the people in the Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, they have these little tiny patches for farming. They would need like 100 times more farming arable land with actual crops growing months and months ago if they actually want to feed any of these people. You think about how much work has to be done to actually sustain life. And now think about it this way. They're pretending to farm because they have nothing to do in terms of their own survival. In the past, they would have woken up at sunup, gone to bed at late hours of the night, working nonstop all day just to have food to survive, especially considering they need to prepare for the winter, right? What are you going to do to make sure you survive in the cold when there's no crops? Well, these people don't really have to worry about that. So they have their trashy little LARP garden with nothing really in it, and they get food, they get pizza deliveries. These are people who are desperately trying to emulate real life. That's what it's about. They have no purpose, they have no guidance, they have nothing. So they create this fake little world where they can pretend they have something. You know what these people need? I'll tell you what they need. They need a VR headset. These people need to be plugged into the Matrix. And I'm not saying by force. I'm saying like you lay back, you put on your headset and simulate survival. Go play some video games. Give yourself some purpose. A lot of other people do that. But they don't know what they want. It's like I'm imagining it's this weird thing where they don't understand why it is they're driven to do the things they do. It's almost like instinct. They're like, I have to try and do this because you don't need to anymore. And it's making them all go insane. They say in Nashville, a group of protesters converged on the Legislative Plaza on Friday, announcing plans to seize the area in front of the Tennessee State House as an autonomous zone. Now, that is a bold proposition. The demonstrators declared the plaza would be renamed Ida B. Wells Plaza after the early civil rights leader. Video from the scene showed the demonstrators chanting and singing on the plaza late into the night, apparently left to their own devices by law enforcement. However, Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, a Republican, warned protesters in his state against trying to seize territory. Lawlessness, autonomous zones, and violence will not be tolerated. Further, Tennessee law expressly prohibits camping on state property, not expressly designated as a campground area, and that law will be enforced. Lee announced that he supports the right to peaceful assembly and peaceful protest under the First Amendment and would continue to protect those rights. Well, today is the day they're going to ramp things up across this country. The Seattle Autonomous Zone is probably going to expand. I imagine that some of these other cities will start to see their own emergence of autonomous zones, and I think we might be looking at some kind of Occupy Wall Street 2.0. The only difference this time, people are bringing guns and guarding the borders and declaring themselves autonomous. They have access to buildings, they have access to resources, and they're imposing their will on those within their borders. We'll see how things play out. But let me tell you something. There's a big difference between now and Occupy Wall Street. The start of Occupy Wall Street was a bunch of hippies sitting in a park and Antifa types in a circle discussing the big protests that would come. The emergence of this and these protests started with mass nationwide rioting, Molotov cocktails, and cops getting shot in the head. There's a big difference. This may become substantially worse, so I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you all then.